Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Takes here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm Kevin Knight. I'm Falcoholic Kevin, joined by, of course, the titular Tre'Shon from Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon Diaz. He's at Trey3Shon over on the Twitters, at Tre'Shon.io on the Blue Skies. Tre'Shon, welcome back. Last week we did a Wednesday version. We did the live. This week back to Tuesday. But we're inching closer to the draft. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm itching for more and more details on these pro days. Where's Terry? Where's Raheem? And did we pack up the whole family? How's it looking out there? So we're getting just a nice little IV drip of information as the days are picking up until the draft. So we're less than a month away, or really almost exactly 1 month away at this point. So
Yeah.
Just really ready for that day to be here.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. We're sort of in the home stretch of the pro days and stuff, and then it'll be sort of just trying to parse out everything that we've learned and ranking and getting ready for the draft itself. So this is definitely one of the funnest times of year. The Falcons haven't made it easy on us because they only have 5 picks, only 2 of which are in the top 100. Obviously, the last show I did was a mock draft with a trade down, so you could see, that's a possibility for the Falcons to get some more assets in the door. They could also consider player trades like we've talked about, although on the Kirk Cousins front, not to talk about Kirk Cousins much, but it sounds like he's going to wait until after the draft, so probably I didn't think that pick was going to be significant anyway, like probably a day 3 pick at best. But that may be a 2026 pick at this point, which is fine with me. I don't really care as long as it's more about the salary, with Kirk. So, but Kyle Pitts is going to be a name that's floated basically all the way up until the trade deadline during the season, I would think. And we'll see if the Falcons elect to make any more moves there. But they've got some clear needs. I think that much is obvious, and the biggest one I think still is the edge rush room. They did add Leonard Floyd, and Floyd gave a press conference today on Tuesday, sort of just talking about how excited he is to be in Atlanta. His family's from here, and his mom's been a Falcons fan her whole life, so she was obviously very excited. I hope Leonard is also very excited to be here. He certainly sounds happy to be back home here. So that's one move. We know that Arnold Ebiketie has sort of emerged as a steady pass rusher, if not a spectacular one yet, but we're still hoping. And there's just kind of a smattering of other guys that we need to step up, obviously. I don't know how much we can expect to see from Braylon Trice coming off an injury. Zach Harrison, will he come back to edge? I sure hope so. We'll see. But the biggest need, I think, is still the edge rush room, and that's what the topic of today's show is going to be. We're going to go through our top edge rushers for the Falcons, kind of sorted into first round targets, day 2 targets, day 3 targets, just some of our guys that we feel like it's not necessarily like a ranking of, these are our just top overall. This is more like Falcons specific. So these are the guys we think work for the Falcons, where they're going to be picking what sort of suits them. And obviously they're pass rushers we just like. So, if I like a guy, even if he's not the perfect fit, which I don't even know what that is at this point, I don't think anybody knows what scheme they're going to run. So it's basically a free for all, but, looking forward to this discussion because, this is a fun edge rush group. This is actually a good year to need an edge rusher. This is, a lot of people have maligned this draft class for not being, the sexiest or the splashiest or whatever, but the defensive line, is definitely one spot where it's quite deep.
Yeah, big is beautiful. It's and it's the draft class to show it. And shout out to the Falcons. We love making family members happy. After signing Kirk Cousins, his long time, his wife, family, longtime Falcons fan. So doubling down, doing that with Floyd. Love that move. And Floyd said today himself that he would not be mad at all if the Falcons added more pass rush to the room. Yeah. I'm glad that that's his thinking, because that's all of our thinking. I was definitely not like, Leonard Floyd's in the building, we got this thing locked up. So like you said, really fun group, good year to need an edge. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about these prospects.
Yeah, me too. So we're not going to waste too much time. I'm going to get you guys a word from our sponsor real quick. Bet Online, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the March Madness, because March Madness is well underway now. The Sweet 16 is kicking off, and even if your bracket's busted, BetOnline's got more ways to stay in on the action. They're doing a free Sweet 16 bracket challenge along with live betting on every remaining tournament game. So if your bracket's busted beyond repair, don't worry about it. BetOnline's got something for you. They've also got the largest selection of odds on everything, including, obviously, all the tournaments, MLB, which is firing off real soon, NHL, MMA, boxing, all that stuff. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline's got you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Folks, when you sign up, make sure to go to betonline.ag and enter our promo code, which is BELIEVE. That's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so we're going to start with our top choices. We'll say first round because I don't want to assume that the Falcons stay at 15, but kind of guys that we, first of all, think will potentially be available at 15. Or potentially after a trade down, whatever. But, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking to you guys about Abdul Carter because if you don't love Abdul Carter, I don't know what to say. And obviously, if he was on the board, then yes, they're taking Abdul Carter. But unfortunately, not going to be the case. I don't think he's going to be on the board at 4, much less 15. So, but I will let you kick us off with sort of who's one of your favorite options for Atlanta here in the first round.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's start with the hot name. We'll just go off with Mike Green. And so Mike Green is probably one of the most intriguing pass rushers in this entire class. He had the production that people want to see. Yes, it came against Marshall, but 2 of his 17 sacks came against Ohio State, put out a lot of really good tape. He dominated the Senior Bowl against, pretty much all of the, quote unquote, first round, high-end tackles that were there. And so he's really somebody that since the process has started, we've all been looking at very closely. You and I were both really intrigued by him at the Senior Bowl when we were there. His calling card is, I think, the bend and the speed. And it really shows up. He's got a really diverse speed pass rush bag. What we were looking for at the Senior Bowl was, can that speed be converted to power? And he showed us that with his rep against Josh Connerly. I think that was like his first or second rep of the day. And he just exploded through him. Since the pro days happened, we've seen the agility and explosive metrics come out. And he is, again, just kind of, blowing everybody out of the water at this point in terms of being a prospect, to the point that the off the field issues are really starting to kind of get drowned out in the conversation of Mike Green. There was a point there where they kind of at the forefront of the discussion, but his play, and I guess, you chalk it up to the interview process that he's gone through with teams, it seems as if, the issues surrounding him have taken a little bit of a back seat, and teams are willing to do a lot more extensive work to kind of see if it is a big concern, if it's something that's going to keep them from taking him at 15. And if he checks out and they feel comfortable, he's somebody that I think, is definitely going to be on the watch list for 15. Somebody that could keep them from trading down if he makes it to 15.
Yeah, I do think Mike Green at this point, someone that I've come on here and said, like, I suspected he would be off Atlanta's board. That doesn't appear to be the case. This is a new day. We've turned over a new leaf here. There's also just the stuff like the allegations and stuff that, again, we don't get firsthand information on this, but from what I've been able to gather, teams don't seem overly concerned, at least about the high school stuff. That seems to be not something that teams are concerned at all about, given what they've been able to gather. The college stuff doesn't seem like people really know much about that at all, which, again, not really much we can take away from that, but Raheem Morris isn't going to Marshall's Pro Day if they're not interested heavily in Mike Green. So at this point, I think we have to consider him, and he would be my guy as well. Like, I think if he's there at 15, it's very tempting. And I think the unfortunate truth is that he could be the second edge rusher off the board and therefore not make it to 15. I think a lot of fans should prepare themselves for that, because I think he's going to impress a lot of people. That 6'8", 5'3" cone is really impressive. To say the least. So, he's definitely also the guy that I would love there. And I think he's got the makings of a very good pass rusher, and I think if the Falcons would probably be ecstatic to be able to walk away from pick 15 with a guy that could be an elite pass rusher, elite overall edge rusher in the NFL with some refinement. I think the size, he's not the biggest. I think that's going to probably hurt him as a run defender early, but it's not like he's below threshold or anything. It's just adjusting to the NFL size in the run game it takes a lot of work for a lot of college players. So, wouldn't be shocked there if that does take some time. But, another guy, the guy that I opened my first mock draft with was James Pierce Jr., who kind of an interesting athlete and a guy that is just so straight line explosive, plays with more of a power profile, especially this year as opposed to last year than you would expect. But isn't the bendiest guy, despite kind of being that speed rusher archetype. So he's a little bit of an interesting one, but also someone who dominated college football, elite pass rush metrics, 23% pass rush win rate, and a better run defender, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for. Again, I think we saw this year he developed kind of an uncanny strength game and started to do some speed to power stuff that I thought was really intriguing, and I think shows that this is a guy that can continue to grow into a 3-down player, whereas I think a lot of people had him kind of pegged after his 2023 season as just a pass rush specialist.
Yeah, Pierce is really interesting. Like you said, I think the first thing I noticed about him is that he's seemingly built like Gumby, but he has the bend of a brick wall. He's just it's very interesting. I don't know. You don't really see too many body types that rely on more of a kind of power setup to his game. And that's really what we saw this last year. But like you said, in 2023, you do see more of the speed bag. You see a little bit of a different approach. So I'm not really sure if 2024 was about putting, a little something different on film after maybe being pigeonholed as just this kind of specific type of edge player or not. But he's somebody else where it's funny, you talk about off the field stuff wrecking your profile. If you looked at these two incidents between Mike and Pierce and you had to guess whose stock is getting more throttled right now by their off the field stuff, you would think it's Green, but it's seemingly Pierce. There's people that think Pierce is going to fall into the second, which it seems kind of crazy considering that the issues seem to be more personality related versus criminal. So yeah, Pierce is definitely somebody where I think people have kind of forgotten about that option, especially in a trade down scenario. But even at 15, this is a guy that people were comfortable saying top 5 pick a year ago. People expected him to be where Abdul Carter is going.
Yeah, and Abdul Carter obviously took that next step, that Micah Parsons-esque step there. And Pierce also had a great year. It's just some guys launch themselves into the stratosphere, and some guys just continue being good. And I think that's kind of what James Pierce did. So again, weird profile with the lack of bend despite being a speed rusher, and I don't know how teams are going to take that. But I think he also kind of showed that he's not as concerning as a run defender as I think he was last year. And that I think will help his profile. So it's I don't know exactly where he falls, but yeah, it does seem that teams are put off by the attitude. And we'll see if the Falcons are put off or not. We don't really know about that one, but yeah, curious who another guy for you would be here, because I think there's at least a few more names to consider here in the first round. Yeah.
Yeah. So, talking about Ben, Donovan Ezeraku, that's probably the name that I think for all scouts has just continued to climb up the board as the process has kind of begun. We really saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he was one of the guys out there that was lighting it up. He is very similar to Green in how he wants to win as a pass rusher. He wants to beat you around the edge. He wants to be able to bend the corner. He's going to rip out some spin moves. He's going to use more of a speed bag, but he's not really a true speed rusher, in my opinion. He really relies on that bend and athleticism where he's able to just put his body and get into awkward positions that make him very, very difficult to block. And one thing that he's really great at is he's probably one of the better guys at only giving up a shoulder or really minimizing the like surface area for offensive linemen to strike and be able to get their hands on him. He's probably one of the better guys at that. Good production, has again, a pass rush repertoire that he can pull out and that he can work consistently. You just lose the explosiveness. I think that's kind of where Green really starts to separate himself from Ezzy. Is Ezeraku just doesn't really have that, I think, tier one like athleticism, explosiveness. When you see the RAS card, it's going to be all lit up in green. He's built very similarly to AK. He's a 6'2" guy, but he's got like almost 34-inch arms. So he has the length profile that the Falcons really like. And he's somebody where stylistically and just kind of like what they've liked in the past just really matches up with the team. So I think that he's somebody that's in play. Even though 15 feels a little too rich for me, if they get through this process and they're like, you know what, we don't really want to do the Mike Green risk. We don't want to do the James Pierce risk. So we're going to take Ezzy early in case other teams feel the same way about those two guys and we can't trade down and get Ezeraku at 20 or something like that. But he's still a guy that I think, maybe you hope that he is there in a trade down situation.
Yeah. To me, I think he's a guy you're looking at as more of a trade down candidate. And, I like him. To me, he reminds me a lot of AK in college. And you mentioned that the size profile is very similar. Like AK is another guy, 6'2", but has longer arms. I think Ezeraku's a bit longer overall, but, maybe I'm just like unfairly comparing the two because it's like I was really high on AK and thought he was a steal in the second round. He hasn't really become as good as I thought. And then Ezeraku comes along and reminds me a lot of AK. And he's getting now the first round hype. And I'm like, well, I don't think AK panned out in the second round. So why am I taking this bet in the first? But they're not the same player. They're not destined to have the same career, but I think a good comp for him is AK, and part of me wonders if the Falcons want to go down that road again or not. But I do like Ezeraku. I think he's definitely worthy of a first round pick, especially towards the later half of the round. I'm curious to see how highly he is valued because I know supposedly the Bucs love him, and stuff like that. So very curious to see where he ends up. I wonder if this is the time for the Georgia boys conversation because there's two Georgia players, two Georgia. Well, I don't know if we should say two edge rushers given the measurements of one of these players, but they're both considered edge rushers by many. And that would be obviously Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams. Now, I mean, I might be the internet's biggest Jalen Walker hater at this point. I don't know. I don't think I've really besmirched the man at all, but I think if you asked anyone, Jalen Walker would be way higher on the board than Mykel Williams. And as an edge rusher, I disagree. I don't think Jalen Walker can be an NFL edge rusher or other than a designated pass rusher. He's just too small. But then you see Mykel, who is not, overly productive and, was good, but not great. But he's not even 21 years old. He won't even be 21 on draft day. Has the size that Jalen Walker doesn't. And we've seen the role, right? Playing 4-eye basically. And was playing hurt all season. So, it's a curious conversation to have about, well, if we're looking at edge rushers and Jalen Walker, I think certainly has a future as this sort of hybrid player. I think a lot of people are hoping he's Micah Parsons, which if you're putting your eggs in someone being the Micah Parsons basket, that's not something that we've seen before or again since Micah Parsons. So that's a bold choice to comp someone to Micah Parsons. It's funny because I think a lot of people comp Abdul Carter to Micah Parsons, and I agree with that comp a bit more. But Carter's bigger, obviously. But curious what you think about these two guys, because I came away from this process actually liking Mykel quite a bit more and liking Jalen Walker less, especially now that we've seen, the size and the testing and all that.
Yeah, with Jalen Walker, I just feel that a lot of people are kind of like forgetting the length factor of playing on the edge in the NFL. And so, yes, we've seen like Micah, who has like sub 32-inch arms, have success. Micah has athletic, like he's just a rare athlete. He's completely different. He's a tier one guy, and Walker didn't do any of the testing that would have supported he is that same caliber of athlete. And so that's the real big issue with Walker's grade right now. I think it's one reason why some people are almost even more nervous, because it's like, okay, you did all the measurements that show you're like in the bottom percentiles of like outside linebacker or edge rusher if you separate the two groups, and you're not going to do any of the testing for us now. It's kind of like a big red flag from a scouting standpoint. It feels like there's almost something to hide, because when you watch his tape, you see somebody doing a quarter of a job or half of a job at both of these positions, where he's asked to do some off-ball linebacker work, but not real off-ball linebacker work. Like, look, guys, QB spy, that's what you make the dumbest linebacker in the room do. Yes, you usually make the most athletic linebacker in the room do it too, but it's not asking a lot of somebody. And there's way more to the position than follow the quarterback. You need to be able to read run keys. You need to be able to understand the guard pulling, block downs, all that, what it means to you, process that information in about half a second, and then be able to trigger on it. Jalen Walker did not put that on film consistently. He was put in positions where he really only had to make one or two decisions, like at most. And you know what? He did have success doing that. But when you go to the next level, especially when you talk about tweeners and guys who are going to have these specialized roles, that means the playbook is all the much thicker. And he's going to have to be able to take in all that information, apply it. And can he do it? Maybe. Is he going to do it in year one? I don't think so. You know, most edge rushers aren't really going to be able to get their feet going until about year 2 or year 3. He's fighting an uphill battle against the length. He's fighting the uphill battle of that. We don't know if he has the testing numbers. It's a very scary pick at 15. I totally see the upside. You could see this freak athlete who's maybe able to do a lot for you, and can be this kind of, multi-pronged solution. But Michael Williams, to me, is really the guy that kind of fulfills like that role, because, we've talked about him playing the 4-eye. Well, for us, that's kind of a good thing. We need somebody who can actually play the run in the 4-eye. If the team is going to stick in the 3-4, we need somebody who can then kick out to the edge and be a legitimate edge rusher too. So I like the versatility. I like the fact that he kind of had to play, in a different role than the one that the league would see him at full time. And like you mentioned, Kevin, the youth, the length, the upside. He's somebody where I'm like, okay, I am much more willing to bet on his traits and his athletic build than I would be willing to bet on Jalen Walker's right now. And that's just kind of where I'm at with the two of these guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think they're kind of anti-prospects. It's like, Walker's like they're both sort of like Walker's all potential, but doesn't have the build, doesn't have the size. Whereas Michael is like the build and the tape as a run defender. He's an elite run defender. I mean, like, he can do everything that you need him to do as a run defender. And I don't have any concerns there. So I know I can have Michael Williams walking into a starting job as a run defender on early downs without question. Like, he would probably enter the Falcons as their number one early down edge. And with this build, with this length, like, yeah, he didn't test crazy, but like, you don't have to test crazy to win as a power rusher with a great build. Like, I think people get too caught up in that. And I think his floor is so high. And I think the Falcons almost need more floor than they do ceiling at a certain point with this pick. But I do like Michael a lot, especially in a trade down, because I think 15's early, given that I think the pass rushing potential isn't as high. But if after a trade down, I mean, if you're getting a high floor edge rusher that is going to start and be able to give you early down production and, something as a pass rusher, I mean, even if he's not this elite pass rusher right away, he's got a floor of being at least a serviceable guy. Like, he's not going to be worse than most of the guys the Falcons have been trotting out there to rush the passer over the years.
Right.
And he's young, I mean, 20, less than 21 on draft day. So a lot of potential for him to continue to grow as a pass rusher.
The floor is really, I think, between the two, it's really the floor of Walker that terrifies me, because there's like a situation where you can't do anything with Walker. I just don't see that happening for Williams, who's only 20, is the ability to put on strength. His testing numbers, like you brought it up, like if you're worried about the testing numbers, well, like don't even really freak out about it, because he's going to get bigger, faster. He's going to be a bigger, faster, and stronger version of himself in just 2 years, in just 1 year. He's that young to where that the growth is still happening. And so I wouldn't really freak out too much there. I would be more worried about the fact that his teammate does not want to test and does not want to put like numbers out there. That is like, if you're not willing to do it at all, that's really the red flag for me, compared to like, oh, well, these numbers are good, but maybe not super elite.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the last anti-prospect?
Shamar Stewart?
Let's go.
Yeah, I think people got very upset when I was like, well, if I'm betting on two guys that are all potential, and yes, I recognize Jalen Walker has more production to this stage. I do recognize that. Why wouldn't I bet on the guy who's a one-of-one athlete with an elite build? Like, I mean, I get Jalen Walker's had better production, but I mean, can you see Shamar Stewart? Like, I mean, it's like that meme of, Derrick Henry standing next to Mark Ingram, it's like, which one do you want,
Yeah. And, we're not trying to take anything away from production, but college production is not a indicator of NFL success. Like we've seen over the years, like numerous guys who, like Michael Sam, who was SEC sack leader, and like it doesn't always work. It doesn't always transfer. And we've seen guys like Daniel Hunter, who've had very little to no production in college, turn out to be one of the best. And it's like you said, it is a bet. And every prospect is a bet. But when like we're looking at the biggest boomer bust guys in here, Walker is in that category with Turner, and I'm with you. I prefer to take the bet on 1% athletes, 1% body types. Maybe Walker is a 1% athlete, but we don't have confirmation of that. We have to look at the film. The film, I see a good, really good athlete. I just don't know if I see a 1%er. When you watch Shamar's tape, big men are not supposed to move like that. You're not supposed to be that bendy. You're not supposed to be able to kind of have the lateral agility ability that he has on the playing field. It's different and it's noticeable. And yeah, like, I know this is getting annoying to hear when we talk about, well, this guy played in the 4-eye and this guy played, on the edge. Those things do matter. And those are the things that you have to account for when you're looking at pass rush opportunities, and when you're looking at, okay, why did this guy's production seem to just never materialize? And it's because of the role that certain players are asked to play in the systems that they're in college. And Shamar Stewart's job was to keep the quarterback contained. It was to create opportunities for others, and it was to defend the run first and foremost. And he was able to excel at the role that he was in. And when you're looking at projecting to the next level, it's somebody that you have to feel comfortable with, the same way whoever takes Walker would have to feel comfortable with, that this plan is going to take time. And again, that's kind of really just the rule of thumb for any edge rusher that's drafted. Khalil Mack had 4 sacks as a rookie. Trayvon Walker had, I think, 4 sacks his rookie season. He's had 2 back-to-back double-digit sack seasons. He's one of the best run defenders in the league. These edge rushers all take time. Latu last year, Turner last year, both had underwhelming performances. Versus those kind of rookie seasons are the outliers for edge defenders. They're not the kind of seasons you bank on. And it's why I know both of us have been pushing for Atlanta to draft a pass rusher for so long, because it takes time for those guys to get their feet under their legs before they can truly be impactful in the NFL. And it's like why it's so frustrating this year, because even if they do land a guy, he's probably going to get you, like, best case scenario, 5 sacks.
Yeah. He's going to be part of your rotation as a rookie. And if you can get more than that, then obviously you're going to be happy, but you're unlikely to get more than that. But yeah, I mean, Shamar Stewart is just, he's an alien, man. I mean, it is what it is. Like, yes, he didn't have great production, but you do have to take into account the role he was asked to play. He was basically asked to be a 3-4 defensive end and play I mean, speaking of 4-eye, played a lot of 4-eye. And
That's a good, yeah.
Yeah, and he did a good job. Like, yeah, he didn't stack the stat sheet, but he's a good run defender. Like, I mean, he's very effective there. And again, he provides you that floor. I mean, he's an elite run defender. He opens stuff up for everybody else. He had a ton of pressures. Like, I think people look at the 2 sacks and they're like, oh, this guy can't rush the passer.
He's a pocket pusher, like the definition.
Yeah, he had like 40 pressures or whatever it was. Which for a guy who's playing 3-4 defensive end and acting as like a quasi interior player at a lot of the time, that's a great number. And I personally think when he showed up to the combine at like 267, 270, he should play it that weight, because at that weight he is an alien.
He looked good, man.
Yeah. That I think 290 is too heavy. I think 270 is perfect. Like he is jacked up. He can move like no one. Like, I mean, he is a special athlete. And the frame is incredible. This is a guy that you're like, look, we just think we think that we can teach him to rush the passer, and we'll be fine with him having a high floor as a run defender. He's going to play on early downs for us. He's going to push the pocket. We'll teach him how to rush the passer. And in 2 and 3 years, we could have, an all-pro. I mean, that's his ceiling. He has a lot of people throw that word around like it's meaningless, but Shamar Stewart is one of those guys with a legitimate all-pro ceiling.
And I'll say this too, with Stewart and Williams both, one of the big reasons why I like taking bets I would rather take a bet on the 2 of them compared to Walker is when you look at what the Falcons do not have in their room on their defensive line unit, it is bodies like that. They don't have a Michael Williams body on their line. They don't have a Shamar Stewart body. We have some Jalen Walkers already. We have some like smaller, more agile, kind of athletically built guys. When you look at AK, when you look at even Floyd is somebody who is leaner and lanky, somewhat similar, but his game is completely different to Williams's game. And so when I just look at what this room doesn't have, it's those power players. It's those different body types that you can't, you have to deal with them when they're on the football field. You can't just leave it alone, leave a one-on-one situation, because that guy's going to destroy, just physically outhandle whoever's across from him. And what makes Walker different from Green and Ezeraku, for people who are like, well, why do you like them so much? We don't have to teach them to rush the passer. These 2 are some of the most refined pass rushers in the draft class. If you told me Jalen Walker had the pass rush bag and proven ability that Green and Ezeraku has, then I would be sold. Then I would be like, yeah, this guy is the next Micah Parsons. Like, forget the length concerns. Like, this you don't see this very often, but he never put that on tape. And so that's why he's kind of in this category of boomer bust guys. And for me, he's just not my type.
Yeah, it's just not my type either. And I won't be shocked if he goes to a team with a good goes to the Eagles,
Yeah.
I mean, he still has top 10 hype. Daniel Jeremiah repeatedly putting him in the top 10. I believe Daniel Jeremiah.
Panthers.
And I could see teams thinking that he's Micah Parsons. I'm just not the one that's going to make that bet if it was up to me. And maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if I miss out on Jalen Walker becoming Micah Parsons in 3 years, but I get a good player, like say we get Mike Green in here instead, and Mike Green isn't quite as good but is still a great player, then it's like I'm not going to lose too much sleep over that. I mean, it's just you gotta measure how much risk you want to take.
It's like guys. People trying to kill the Jacksonville Jaguars for Walker over Hutch. Like, is Aiden Hutchinson the better player? Like, yeah, he is. Is Trayvon Walker still a double-digit sack guy that's like one of, like, again, a top 10 run defender in the league? Yes, you can live with, like, it's like, oh, like you can live with that situation. And so I'm with you. If it doesn't work out, all it really means is that whoever the Falcons picked instead, like, Walker working out doesn't mean anything in regards to like who the Falcons picked. And if that person didn't work out, that's not like, oh, if they had gotten Walker, the situation would have been different. No, it just means that like the Falcons had a bad scouting job and they weren't able to get this player that they thought was going to be the right fit for them in this situation to work out.
Yeah. Do we really trust the Falcons to develop Jalen Walker also? If we just start there, how
Yeah,
many linebackers have
know,
they
yeah.
developed,
I do get worried though, Kevin. Like you've said, we've seen people mocking. He's somebody where I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons did take him.
No, I wouldn't
Just
be shocked.
because,
Yeah.
We see this happen all the time. And they could, they've been in Athens heavy this year, it seems. So,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's for Michael Williams. Maybe it's even for Wilson, but we'll see.
Malachi Starks too. That's a topic for a different
well,
show.
yeah, sneaky pick at this point. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people have kind of put him on the back burner, but would not put it past them.
Nope, not at all. But yeah, I mean, those are most of the day one guys. I mean, Nick Scorton could sneak into day one. I love Nick Scorton. I think Texas A&M did this man a disservice making him play at 290. I think he's a 260-pound edge rusher.
Yeah.
And I think he's a guy after a trade down I would be circling if these other guys are gone. He didn't measure out as well as I'd hoped. He measured in a little small, not as much length, but his year at Purdue was elite. I mean, he had such a great season there, and he's someone I wouldn't rule out as being I think a high upside guy coming. You get a little bit of a discount with him coming off a less productive year, but
he could be the Chop Robinson of this class, man.
Yeah.
There were people last year who were like, Chop Robinson's a first round pick. Like this guy's like being really undervalued right now. And I believe that it was kind of a similar case where his 2022 tape was much better than his 23 tape.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you do get lucky and get those guys. When you look at the most productive edge rushers from last year's class, they both went after the 15 pick.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, you got any day two guys you love? We'll kind of get to a couple of these names here too, just some ideas.
Yeah. Oladejo out of UCLA. He's somebody where like he's getting top 30 invites right now at this point in time and getting visits. So I find that really interesting. He was somebody at the Senior Bowl who just like physically stood out. He's just towering figure. He looked good there, and he's somebody that I've kind of done a little bit more digging into. The tape is like a little questionable. I think he started off in the day 2, day 3 range. Feel like that was kind of pretty accurate for him. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to sneak into the back of the first round. But I know there are a couple of guys like Brett Coleman who have like put out there, they think that there's potential for something like that to happen. So he's somebody who I think if he's there at 46, and maybe the Falcons went in a different direction in round 1, I could definitely see them being very intrigued with his athletic profile. He's got the length. He's somebody who I think he can do a lot of work for you and be a big help in the run game. But you see the potential as a pass rusher. And he's a guy that really stood out at the Senior Bowl when we were there.
Yeah. No, I thought he showed up late and was able to make an impact pretty quickly, which is always nice to see. I know there's a couple of guys that everyone has circled at 46 if the Falcons don't get, someone at 15. Landon Jackson and Princely Umanmielen are kind of the two that we always see linked. And, Landon Jackson has had the best like postseason probably of anybody. Like, I mean, tested out like an alien, just a hair below Shamar Stewart. But, by all accounts, he's really sort of aced the pre-draft process. And kind of the polar opposite of Princely Umanmielen, who had the tremendous season, but has kind of had some question marks with his post-draft process, but is the more proven pass rusher, obviously, and Landon Jackson obviously is the established run defender with the incredible size. So, those two are, I think, names that we're going to see mocked to Atlanta a lot in the second round. But yeah, I mean, I think both of them they have their questions, but they're intriguing.
Yeah, Landon is very much like Shamar Stewart, but less refined in the run. The run is still like the strength of his game, like where you're going to be able to get him going the fastest when you bring him into the league. But he's definitely more of a raw guy. But what you like about Landon is that you do see him try out different moves. like there's at least a willingness and a concerted effort to like attempt to get to the quarterback, whether it's throwing a cross chop, whether he's just trying to work a rip. So he feels like a guy that you can really mold who wants to continue to get better. And he's, like you said, just that kind of rare body type to see him get there. Princely is like really funny because, yeah, he's like somebody like I remember sitting in the stands and we're just kind of like me, you, and Aaron Freeman were like, all right, we're waiting for him to do something. And we left day 3 and we were like, he didn't do anything the entire time.
It's concerning. It's concerning.
But I've started to get really intrigued with his teammate Jared Ivey, who again, like you just looking at this, it's just like like the most 6'6" edge rushers I feel like I've ever seen. Like, Simeon Rice, I know you're out there somewhere right now, like setting the tone. Is like the first 6'7" defensive end I could ever remember. He played for those legendary Tampa Bay Bucks. If y'all don't know, Simeon Rice, it's a great edge rusher to go look up. He like reminds me, it's like so many different guys in this class. And he's like, Ivy is somebody who like a lot of potential, not a lot of production, like almost the opposite kind of a season from Princely, where he definitely benefited from what Princely was doing on the other side. But man, he's just a very interesting dude. And then a complete flip.
Yeah,
which probably the most
I know where you're going.
Guy. You know exactly where I'm going. Is David Walker.
Yeah.
Kevin, tell the people about David Walker.
I love David Walker, man. Not just, and not just because we could probably get DW back, into the Falcons if we draft him. I was like, oh, DW, what if we draft you? You're gonna have to come back. But no, I mean, like David Walker, much more humble type of prospect. I mean, doesn't really have the size. 6'2", 260, very compact power rusher. But he just wins, I mean, I think that's what he is. I think he's, obviously Central Arkansas, he dominated, like just flat out destroyed everyone he played against in the run and the pass. I think he's capable of being a good run defender, but it's just the lack of length, that concerns you. But he's just good. Like, and like, I don't know if he's going to be this elite player. Obviously, I don't think he's going to have Central Arkansas's level production. If I thought he was going to have 12 sacks, he'd be going in the first round. But he's just a good player, and I would love to get him in the 4th round. Just add him to the rotation because I think he's going to be. I think he's a third edge for a team. Like, I think he is a third edge rusher that's going to come in, can play the run, can play the pass, whatever you need. Not going to be the flashiest guy, but he's just going to produce, and I think that's going to. People will love him. Like, he's just going to be that guy that always feels underrated. Always feel like you want to make him the edge 2. Probably should stay the edge 3. But, like, maybe if he had to play edge 2, I mean, for the Falcons, probably be better than their edge 2. But I love David Walker. I think he's a great prospect. And, on that note of another guy that's like a small player, Josiah Stewart from Michigan is really weird. But I think he ended up with the highest pass rush win weight of anyone in the edge group, 27.7%, according to PFF. 9 sacks. He's 6'1", 245. I mean, look, I'm just saying, like Josiah Stewart, if we could get Jalen Walker at, 15 or Josiah Stewart at 50, I don't know why I wouldn't just go with Josiah Stewart at 50, other than that he doesn't have a G on his helmet. But, he's a very interesting player, obviously polar opposite of some of these guys we've been discussing, but can't deny that the dude can just rush the passer. I mean, he just... That might be all he does, but like he's interesting for sure.
Yeah, and when you're looking at like day 2, day 3, like this is kind of where you lean a little bit more on like, all right, I'm okay if a guy's a specialist, like if he has a proven ability to get to the quarterback. And we've seen guys, and I'm not saying this is who Walker is, but Elvis Dumerville was 5'11". And the thing about those edge rushers, and I like that you said, like, he's the perfect edge 3, and I agree because it sounds super silly, but just him being out there, because I think he's just like this cannonball with arms and legs. Like you said, stout is the word. And I mean, at the point of attack, he had legitimate strength. Nobody really was just straight up bullying him at the Senior Bowl, and he was bullying people on his own.
Yes.
When you throw that body type out there after an offensive lineman's been going out against the same, pretty much exact same profile, because teams love to pretty much build off of the same kind of athletic profiles, and then you throw somebody out there like that who's just completely different body type, mentally, they have to recalibrate how they're going to play, block, everything that they do. It changes their hand placement to a pretty large degree. It's different when you're going from 6'2" to 6'3", 6'3" to 6'4". When you go from 6'4" to 6 foot, it's like it's a huge switch up for an offensive lineman. So I really like him in that edge 3, edge 4, even whatever you want to say, rotation role, where you just let him go out there and pin his ears back and kind of get after the quarterback. And Josiah Stewart's another guy, like you said, like if you're going to take a bet on a player that is on the that end of the athletic spectrum, again, you're fine with that going in the second round versus maybe putting all of your eggs in that basket in round 1. There's just a lot of intriguing players in this draft class for the Falcons to take, to where it doesn't feel like you need to force a project at 1. You could go with need and maybe go with somebody that you think is a little bit of a higher floor guy.
Yeah, no, and that, I think that's part of the reason why they really need to do their best to trade down, is that like the strength of this class isn't the top 15. It's like the top 5.
Yeah.
Top 6. I mean, you get Cam Ward, who I think has solidified himself as like a legit top quarterback prospect. He's had a great pre-draft process, but you got Travis Hunter up there, you got Abdul Carter, you got Mason Graham. But like after that, it's like these guys are all kind of in a I would say like a pod of players where it's like these next 20 or 30 guys I think are all interesting options. And there's like ranks within that group, but I think for the Falcons at 15, like there's positions that have a lot more limited numbers. Like I would say, tight end is a 2-player position. You got Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And if Tyler Warren goes early, someone's going to want Colston Loveland and maybe consider trading up for him. Or like wide receiver. If Hunter and Tet go in the top 10, you're looking at apparently there's teams that are just way low on Luther Burden. Like that he's really fallen, which kind of surprises me. But I guess given his final season of production, maybe it's not that surprising. I don't know. But like if teams think it's like, well, we have Mika Ibuka and we have Matthew Golden, and those are our last 2 first-round receivers, there's a lot of receiver needy teams in the 20s. And say the same thing about tackle. So there's going to be defensive linemen for the Falcons to take if they go to 20, 22, 25. Like there's going to be a defensive lineman there for them to take that they're going to like. But these other teams, their options may be more limited. So I think it's advantageous for Atlanta if they can pull that off.
Yeah, I agree. It would probably really hurt to trade down if Mike Green's there at 15. There definitely players where I'd be like, maybe it was worth getting Mike Green instead of trading down and taking Scorden. But you kind of have to, again, you gotta trust the process a little bit here. Because the Falcons have a lot of needs, and no 3rd-round pick, no 5th-round pick. Those are extremely critical picks, especially in this draft class where we're talking about a bunch of guys here to where if you double dip and you ended up with like Nick Scorden and Landon Jackson, there's way worse draft results than that. Or if you ended up and you somehow got Ezeraku and David Walker, if you are able to kind of pull off, a double dip, or even just, again, add interior pass rush help at the nose position or whatever, then you can live with the overall, process that the Falcons went through. And that's kind of just something that we're going to have to wait and see on, because, unless they trade that 15 tomorrow, we're not going to know until draft night.
Yeah, no, we won't really know. I think this is definitely a class that you want multiple bites at the apple at edge if you can. One in the first round, one maybe in the 3rd round or 4th round. And we didn't even talk about all the guys. Like there's a lot more guys, like the Ohio State guys, and I know that Kyle Kennard has his fans, and
Aaron Farrell,
the
Tyler
Falcons,
Batty, a classic 3-4 guy.
Yeah, I think the Falcons were looking at Q Robinson, I guess, from Alabama, who's probably more of a day 3 guy. But again, like this team is looking at early guys and sort of mid-round guys. So I think a double dip again, like a double dip at edge rusher, is not out of the question at all.
It triple dipped on the D line last year, so like I definitely think double dipping is in play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's gonna be hard to do that with only 3 legit picks.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're gonna have to find a way.
Get the movement going, like we've been talking about. So
yeah, so we'll see. But this is a good class to have. Like those day 2 picks are critical. So I do think they're gonna really strongly consider that move. But even if they don't, that second round pick is, I think, gonna be a big contributor, or could be a big contributor for them. And they're just gonna have to play the rest of the board as it falls. But Tre'Shon, I think we went deep on a lot of the top guys here. So Falcons fans, hopefully you guys have a good look at sort of the main edge rushers to consider, and hopefully don't think we're the biggest Jalen Walker haters of all time. I believe technically Trevor Sikkema is the biggest Jalen Walker hater of all time. I think he has Jalen Walker number 28 on his big board. So you can direct all your hatred to him.
That's right.
If you really want to go after Jalen Walker haters, but yeah. Anything else you want to end on before we close this one out?
Yeah. I would just say that, like, like at the end of the day, like everybody's going to kind of lean one way or the other. It's all about which direction do the Falcons lean. And if the Falcons think they can get the most out of Jalen Walker, then all right, hey, that's their move. Go for it. We want them to be able to execute that plan. If they lean towards Shamar Stewart, we get it. It's one of those things when you're talking about those kinds of prospects, you do need to make sure that you get into the scary side of like what could become a prospect that I've like kind of backed off with is like Nick Emanwari, and it's for like very similar reasons as to like Jalen Walker. And it's like, these guys, you like the athletic ability, but when it comes to the aspect of playing football, like you still need them to be able to play football. So I like what I like. Kevin likes what he likes. All that matters is what the heck do the Atlanta Falcons like, and can they please just make it work and get to the quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, look at the Falcons. Clearly are not afraid of taking projects on the D line. I mean, look at last year. Ruka Rororo is a perfect example. I mean, Ruka Rororo and Shamar Stewart, actually not that different. I mean, Shamar's like a crazier athlete, and they wanted Rook to play the interior, but I think they had this very similar measurements, like in terms of size. But
the two of those on the line together.
Oh my God, yeah! Just get a line of it. You can put Zach Harrison on one edge. Who's the other guy I forgot about? Who's also like massive. Get Zach. Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't even joke about that yet. No, he's back. But you get those two. You get Zach, you get Rook, and Morgan Fox. There you go. And you get Shamar Stewart, and you'll just have like the longest D line that anyone has ever seen. So I guess we'd have that going for us. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they attack this position, and I don't really think they're done in free agency either. They're probably going to have to add somebody else here unless they get too high end like double dip type guys, but it'll be fascinating to see how they approach it and how the draft goes. But edge is, of all the years, this is probably the year where it's the most likely that they'll take an edge rusher in the first round. But even then, I think the safe money would be betting on another position. Because they just won't do it. They just won't do it.
It's like Jay Barron falls down to 15.
Yep.
Even like you said earlier, Starks. Like I'm not.
I think they love Starks.
I'm like not totally sold that they aren't trying to figure out like, okay, if we trade down to 17, we could probably get Starks still. I don't know, man. There's some players where you could definitely see them getting away from edge.
Yeah. No, I could see it. So I'm really curious to see what they do, and it'll be hopefully fun to watch. Hopefully there'll be some kind of plan that takes shape here. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Hope you enjoyed this look at the edge rushers. We'll be back on Wednesday's show with Joe Patrick to continue going over the free agency moves and sort of try to get the temperature of what exactly this Falcons team is trying to do this offseason. Go follow Tre'Shon Diaz at Trey3Sean and Tre'Shon.io on Blue Sky. Anything else you're working on, Tre'Shon, I want to let the people know about?
No, nothing for me.
Cool. Well, guys, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done that. That helps us out a bunch. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring tonight's episode. We will see you guys next time on Dirty Birds and Brews and the Falcoholic Live. Until then, folks, have a great day. We'll see you.